Miller. I'm colleague of Max Gilgman, who's the content director of Neonyt, and he's going to be moderating this really exciting session. We have here today as panelists Paul Dörtenbach from Expo, we have Daniel Pinto from Scoop and We Sustain, and we have Morgan Parizo from Redress. So participant numbers are quite good. So I will get back to you later. Feel free to ask any questions. We will be monitoring these questions and we'll get to them towards the end of this panel discussion. And I will hand the mic to Max.
I'll take it over from here. So yeah, also for me, a warm welcome. Today we're here as Neonyt and taking over the Sustainable Angle channel. So we're mixing the trade show that is known for its sustainable fabric sourcing opportunities, materials, and so on, pioneering this since 10 years, with Neonyt, which is the fashion platform for fashion innovation and sustainability. And I'm very happy to have this lovely round here. At least some of the advantages of this digital age that we are being pushed in since a few months is that we can have very diverse and very international rounds without all the traveling and so on and so on. So this is extremely lovely from my point of view. We can unite German, Portuguese and Hongkongese, or like probably not originally Hongkongese, skills and knowledge and experiences into one conversation. And I'm really happy about this talk here today, because we're going to explore a topic, or like a range of topics all around recycling and upcycling. And I think that is one of the most important and in many ways, as we like to say in fashion, hottest topics from a sustainability point of view, but also from a design point of view. And that's something we're going to explore here today. And yeah, we will have different perspectives from recycling expertise, like long-term recycling expertise, one of the biggest textile recyclers in the world. We have production, really, I mean, let's say conventional production, but also expertise in upcycling in a serial manner. And obviously we have the whole education side and the Redress Award, which is like the award if we talk about upcycling and really pushing students to look into this topic and exploring it for the future of us all. So really happy to have you all, and I would ask you to introduce yourself briefly, and then we will just kickstart this conversation. And let's imagine we are somewhere having a good tea or coffee and just kind of talk about the future, but not that far distant future. Let's talk about now, what's going to happen next days, because this crisis is tragic and has many difficulties for all of us. For some people it means really, really tragic consequences, but any crisis, every crisis is a window of opportunity also. And this is something we try to focus on today. What can we learn out of it? What can we change? And Sustainable Angle, they've already coined the term transformative 20s beginning of this year. Nobody knew how transformative it would become within a few weeks. But yeah, that's where we are right now. And let's have a view into the near future. That would be what I'd love to do here now. And obviously maybe in a conservative traditional way, but since we have unfortunately 3 white men here and only 1 also rather white woman, so diversity is low, but I hope we can still have great content, and I would like to start with Morgan to tell us a little bit more about your background and Redress.
Sure. Hello everyone from late Hong Kong. It's super great to be able to participate to these kind of events. Even if COVID has hit, at least that's the bright side of it. Everyone is on digital now, I guess. So I'm with Redress. Redress is an NGO based in Hong Kong. Our main mission is to educate people, in particular young designers, but we're also branching out to general public and industry partners in what sustainability means for fashion. And as you mentioned, one of our biggest event for the NGO is the Redress Design Award, the competition for young designer to, you know, dip their toes into what sustainability is, what is upcycling. And my background, I'm a textile engineer. I come from, you know, product development, and I moved on to innovations. And I've actually just joined Redress, I think 4 weeks ago now. So it's still quite fresh for me with Redress.
Great, thanks. Whoever wants to go next, maybe we'll keep the conservative style. So like Paul, you're the older one, I guess, at least.
Yeah. From the looks or?
No, from my knowledge.
Yeah, thank you also from our side for getting this opportunity to speak with you guys here. My name is Paul. I'm a managing director at iCollect. ICO is a daughter company of Soex, and we have established a take-back scheme a little bit more than 10 years ago, where we are collecting discarded clothing, unwanted used clothing, all over the world, solidly with retail partners in order to have an alternative take-back scheme in place next to the more common known curbside collections. And we also have developed a program which is called Revalue, where we are taking care of all kinds of pre-consumer textiles that had not yet had a chance to enter a product life cycle.
Well, actually, Daniel, that sounds like your call in different ways. Anyway, there's nobody else to introduce. But yeah, you also give some revalue sometimes to clothes, also new value.
Yeah, we do. So my name is Daniel Pinto. I'm the strategy director at Scoop, and recently founded We Sustain to accelerate sustainable development. So at Scoop, what we do is we indeed give new value to old or wanted clothes. We're a manufacturer based in Portugal, in the north of Portugal, 31 years in the business. And we act on a goal to upcycle all of our defects, rejects, and surplus fabrics. So over the last 6-7 years, we've been paving our way in that field of the upcycling, turning us a pioneering company on the fashion world in this particular area that is the upcycling.
Yeah, so I hope our audience gets the picture a little bit, why this round is here together, and what we can kind of discuss and maybe also discover, I hope. So I always forget to introduce myself properly, so I'll just do that very briefly. So today, obviously, I'm here as the content director of Neonyt, one of my few hats. I also work with Fashion Revolution, close to my heart as everything, also the SDGs. I mean, that's a passion we share also together, I'm sure. Yeah, with Fashion Revolution, I'm the co-founder of the Fashion Revolution Germany, and we're coordinating it over here. And then I run my small consulting company here in Berlin with my co-founder Magdalena Schaffrin, also one of the pioneers, at least, of the German sustainable fashion scenery. And today we are taking over the Sustainable Angle channel here with our content. So let's see. I mean, you all are touching very different, very similar fields, obviously, but from very different perspectives, and that's what I find very interesting. Maybe as I feel a little bit, Daniel, you are like in the middle also of these kind of things, and maybe like to both of the our other two stakeholders here, you can bridge a little bit. I wonder, like, how did that happen that you went into upcycling? Because I mean, one of the things with upcycling, recycling, it's so hands-on. So quite often I realize people get into it through a very practical personal experience. Why did you start with Scoop looking into upcycling?
So basically, it's actually very funny that, as you say, it is indeed very simple. A lot of people have been doing upcycling for many, many years. What we decided to do was to transform that into an industrial process and helping not the vintage store, not the little designer. Obviously, they're all important, but we looked at the bigger brands, our own clients, and decided to help them. What if there's so much, if we, a small Portuguese factory, have 150 kilometers of stocks, which amounts to more or less 400 million gallons of water in stock over 31 years, how much does all the chain for our biggest client has? So it all started there to understand if it's a process that already exists, let's turn it industrial and let's actually make a change. As you say, it was very simple to create, but there's a major trigger, which is the willpower that the founder of Scoop had to actually make this happen. So we looked at all the options from chemical recycling to mechanical recycling, which in our opinion, it's still a bit far away for not for the textiles, but for reintroduction on the fashion industry. We have a few companies working on that, but we're not there yet. And the upcycling seems for us the easiest and closest way to making a change and to making an impact. And so we joined venture in a little project with the PVH Corporation, with Tommy Hilfiger mainly, where we assumed, and this is when I speak about the willpower of our CEO, we're a very small factory in the worldwide scale, and she decided to take her own risk, her own investment, her own design, propose a totally upcycled collection to the Tommy Group. For 2 years, she didn't give up, and now we're probably on the 6th, 7th collection for them in a model that I believe they're replicating in other factories. So, as you say, it was simple in a way, looking back. Now we understand that it wasn't that easy. It just took a lot of willpower and willingness to do, actually.
Right. Talking about industrial processes, I'd like to ask you, Paul. Obviously, I mean, Soex, your mother company, is working only in industrial processes. Well, you also have like a small retail channel with second-hand shops, which is also an interesting addition to your portfolio, I think. But yeah, if you do something in recycling, it's industrial processes. I well remember the opening of the first serial shoe recycling unit 2 years ago, I think, that I had the pleasure to visit. And so, yeah, how is this aspect? Like, where do you see is the limits of doing recycling and maybe also upcycling? I'm not sure if that's a topic for you on an industrial scale.
I mean, yeah, the industrial scale is actually is truly today's challenge, because when we originally started with ICO, as I said in my introduction, our goal was to really bring up collection volumes on a global scale. If I compare the numbers, I mean, we're only just one company today, and 10 years ago, I think collections have risen a little bit throughout Europe, at least. Nonetheless, there are so many other regions where we need to get better and by increasing collection volumes. And industrial scaling for us is a necessity because we can only work via volumes. It does not simply make economical sense for us to open up a factory or to implement a recycling procedure when we only are able to process a few tons on a monthly basis. And that's why for us, we needed to make sure that we have enough volume to be able to process in the first place. And continuing from that, we need to now make sure to integrate new recycling processes because, yeah, at least for Europe, if we look at upcoming policies, for example, we are very aware of the fact that in collection volumes will definitely increase in the next 5 years. And therefore, we need new innovation to be able to process these volumes.
Yeah, and yeah, as you say, the volumes are getting higher and higher and higher. So I think that's why it's so important to look into recycling and upcycling. It's a solution that can be applied now. Obviously, there's still a lot of things to develop further, but at the same time, you can start tomorrow because so many things are available. Morgan, like to bring you finally also into the conversation, you have a background as textile engineer. So you must have been familiar with all these questions, or like maybe you got familiar with also these things while you were looking into the complexities of textile engineering. How do you see that? Like, how prepared is the industry on the one hand, maybe also in the education area, to really look into recycling and upcycling, and versus the established processes?
I think I feel like everyone is just late in this race. When I say everyone, I mean mostly like the general public and education, actually. With Redress, I mean, our mission is to, first bring awareness to all these topics. And I think as a textile engineer, I didn't graduate, so long ago. But somehow we never talked about recycling during my education. And that's on the engineering side of things. And it's actually the same in design. That's where we're seeing, and we're Hong Kong based, and we talk a lot about, sustainability in Hong Kong with fashion designers, but we'll also have a lot of connections in Europe, in the US, in South America, and everyone is just trying to catch up with this race. So yeah, like the way I see it is, number one, and it's amazing, that we have companies like Soex, the work that you guys are doing at Scoop is great, but we have designers that don't know how to do things, that don't know how important it is. And then we have, on the other hand, general public that, is starting to get the idea, but doesn't realize how important it is, what the potential is, what the value in terms of dollars are on all these materials and garments, and, that are lying there. Today, I was sorting clothes for a pop-up at Redress. We have this pop-up event that helps us, stay alive as a charity. And I literally sorted clothes for an entire day. The value there is behind, like, you just feel like people just throw away, and it's like, commodity, whatever. It just must be going somewhere. And so I think that awareness is huge. And then when you have designers that don't understand that, just don't know that the choices they make when they design something is just going to impact completely, the lifespan of the garment. I think like from that angle is huge. Everyone is kind of catching up, and we're trying to push everyone to catch up on this, to realize how to unlock that value, that it has value. Yeah.
But
please,
I don't want to, I'm absolutely with you, Morgan. I'm as impatient as you are, but if I may, as the oldest, I was introduced as the oldest. If I just compare today's talk versus, let's say, 10 years ago, or even 2011 or 12, I'm quite happy about like the increase in awareness, the increase of interest in our global challenge. When I say I'm dealing solidly with the end of life of garments, for example, people know what I'm doing. I remember 9 years ago, it took me like 45 minutes to explain what kind of job I'm actually doing. And today it's a simple 30 seconds and everybody gets it. And I think that on a positive end is something that that's a change that is positive, and we just need to fuel it and make something out of it, because now's the time.
If I may just, Max, I totally agree with Morgan and Paul. If I look 6 or 7 years ago when we started this road on sustainability or responsible production, we had one brand. Today we have 25. you know, and as Paul said, it also took me a good 45 minutes to explain what we do. I mean, how do you design and build clothes with surplus fabrics or with old garments? Nowadays, people understand it, that on a positive note, but also Morgan touched the point that is very, very important. The designers, the new designers coming up, they're unfortunately, especially the ones working for the big brands, they have no clue of sustainability. They have no clue of the liability they live. I work with them daily, and we do a fair amount of our time is educating also these designers, teaching them that actually we can do the same product a much more responsible way, and that's a frame. Schools and universities should be already teaching the new students the industry of the future. So,
yeah. I mean, I guess recycling should be in really ground school already. I mean, it's. I guess the whole education system really lags behind in terms of like topics. I mean, there's so many things that would be practical in the day for life nowadays that is not taught in schools at all. At the same time, we have a super school-intensive life nowadays. I mean, more and more people like stay in school, go studying, and so on, and still they don't learn practical things. It's a bit of a funny development. Maybe it's also changing slowly. But Morgan, I mean, with Redress, obviously you get a lot of applications then from students, from a new generation of designers. And I mean, at least in my last 10, close now 13, 14 years of dealing with sustainability in textiles and fashion, I had never seen so many designers dealing with upcycling, recycling, in general sustainability, but also explicitly with upcycling. I mean, one of those designers that impressed me very much when I first met her a few years ago was Bethany Williams. I mean, the power and the dedication and the radicalness that is behind her, like I mean, literally, pardon my English, but like she like fuck off the industry. I'm doing it my way. Obviously, you need to be also a bit young and maybe a bit naive to go this way. But when I was studying fashion design, I didn't have co-students that had this drive or this idea. When I was starting to talk about sustainability, like also I was like people looking at me like, yeah, can you eat that or what is that? And I think that has changed dramatically, even in education already. So, long story short, like Morgan, how do you see this kind of next generations that comes through Redress that you also trigger? Is there more hope, or you still think it's just a little fraction?
Well, I can't talk for like the past 10 years, considering I wasn't there unfolding the applications. And this year was really, really my first. But yeah, numbers are definitely increasing if you look at who applies. So that must go both ways with the fact that, you know, Redress is probably getting more known, and but also the fact that people are just more aware and looking for that type of competition and realizing that it is important. But I think it's probably not a huge fraction just yet. I mean, because I personally have the feeling that the designers that come into our competition, their knowledge of sustainability is probably as good as what a very well-informed general public person, you know, has in terms of like level of education about sustainability. Some are very lucky. Some like went to schools that actually integrated sustainability already into their curriculum. Some are less so lucky. It might have been just a non-mandatory class that you signed up, you know, if you had time, if you were interested, and then some just had like no clue. And so we're there to provide tools and, you know, so they get it. So when they come into that competition, they use these tools to kind of realize a collection and materialize all this. So I think the numbers are growing, but I don't know that they're growing maybe fast enough, or that, you know, we're not receiving like tens and tens of thousands of applications each year yet. We're receiving a lot, obviously, and a lot for our size, and it's amazing. And we get really very good quality, designers as well out of these applications. But I think the numbers, we could always aim for higher and hope for higher, that, all designers just want to get into that race of upcycling and recycling and just extending lifespan and using conscious materials and yeah.
But so would you say, is it fair to say that still like, well, it takes a lot of personal passion to really go into sustainable designing?
I think so. And I mean, it's also a kind of young market in a way to position yourself as a sustainable brand. Is very hip at the moment, and like, there's a boom of these brands, but it hasn't been like this for so long. So I don't know that everyone is looking at being a designer to be a sustainable designer. I think it's much more sexy to just be a designer because you're going to be the next Alexander McQueen, and you're just going to do whatever you want and it's just going to look pretty. I think this is not as sexy to be like, okay, now you're going to work with like dead stock garment and actually make something great of it. I mean, whoever loves a good challenge, this is great, but maybe not every designer aspires, unfortunately, to this for many reasons,
Yeah, absolutely true. Well, I mean, early this year, no, last year, time is passing so quickly. Early last year, I had the pleasure and joy to meet Heron Preston, which definitely is one of the most famous designers in the world now. I mean, he's kind of playing the league with Virgil and yeah, a bit more, etc. And I mean, he doesn't exclusively do upcycling, but it's an important and integral part of his work. And I mean, he is a role model for quite a few designers, I'm sure. So I feel the signs are changing there. And what I have kind of, my perception, I mean, I'm dealing with this long time, but some of my best friends here had like the first upcycling store in Berlin, and my partner was a pioneer in open source and upcycling fashion design like more than 10 years ago, and didn't work out financially so well back in the days. But now it does feel like a different time, and it feels like there is market opportunity. But also I see this one really most important development, that people have found ways to make upcycling cool. Because upcycling used to be DIY and like, yeah, you like really, I mean, oh yeah, be proud, oh yeah, tap on the shoulder, you made it yourself, oh great. But now it's like, oh holy shit, that's sexy, like I've not seen that before. Like this is so on spot. So I think that has changed, and that only changed in the last few years. And for me, that is super interesting to see, and you can see how it's. I mean, one of the first brands that tapped into it a long time ago was already Desigual, where I first thought like, oh, how cool. And then I realized, what, they don't upcycle anything. but I could imagine they started probably in upcycling. I don't even know the story, but then they realized they can't scale it, or they were not interested enough to really do it that way. But nowadays, maybe with the help, like with some of these two gentlemen, one can scale it in a different way. So yeah, how's that? Maybe this time the other way around. Like Paul, we talked about it before. You are getting, sometimes you're getting brands right now offering you new clothes with this special situation here, with like stocks exploding and retail still being weak and having been zero for a few weeks. And these brands are asking you to recycle new clothes. Do you think is there a new opportunity to a more serious approach to upcycling, and or what do you see? What's the next steps? Where can we go with this development now?
Absolutely, I think now is, I mean, with any crisis there comes opportunity, and especially for those garments that were not able to be sold during the shutdown period. The brands are looking for options to sell them, of course. It's about money, but it's also about transparency, and it's about purpose as well. So in our conversation, of course, they would like to, a lot of them are dealing perfectly with them by shifting them into another season, and they have internal solutions. But a lot of them approach us and want us to recycle these clothes. And this is something that is for us economically not viable, and it does not make sense to recycle a perfectly wearable item. And that gives room for upcycling opportunities, for example, to change that item so that it's not in competition with the original brand, but may enter a new market and a new target group by redesigning it, for example. And that's the conversation that we're having at the moment with a lot of brands in order to find the gap between a plain reselling, what a lot of jobbers have done in the past, and not having to recycle them. There is a lot of window of opportunity in between those processes.
And what's the biggest challenge in that at the moment, would you say? I mean, the biggest obstacle?
A new way of thinking, I would say.
So again, you need these 45 minutes.
Yeah. Right now we need, again, the 45 minutes, because of course there are a lot of good sustainability managers who totally get what we're saying. But if you look at a company, most of the times we're dealing with the head of warehouse in what so-and-so country, yeah? And he needs to make sure to empty its warehouse, and he needs to make sure to get a decent price, and he also has some restrictions as to what can be done with these items. So when we start with talking sense in terms of us as a service company, we need to educate the people on also the value of goods. And right now, it's especially for the pre-consumer textile and shoe items, it is still the case that a perfectly wearable item should be used as such, and that's where the most value is. If we need to recycle it, we're doing a service in a way, because we need to come up for logistics costs. We need to maintain our machines, and then right now, if we look at the products that we can produce with our mechanical recycling process on a large scale, we are producing a product that is of much lower value than the sweater originally was at. And so,
for example, what are you producing?
Yeah, I mean, the largest or the biggest category is insulation materials for the automobile industry. Since we're based here in Germany, that's kind of like the nearest option. And we would like to see drift that we would like to see drift that product category to a more and higher valued one, where fibers become fibers again, for example. Yeah, but as of now, that's what we do.
Right. And Daniel, so how can you kind of come into this game? I mean, you have a lot of experience now with upcycling existing clothes. What at the moment? I mean, how much can you scale it already? Like, or where's your limits at the moment?
I mean, right now, and going back to the first topic, and as we once had this conversation at Expo, I believe in January, we're willers. So the limit for us right now, there's no barriers of creation. Actually, if you don't mind me showing something for you to understand, there's literally no limits. I don't know if you ever came across a designer called Mariah Isa. That's a total upcycled jacket from labels, composition labels, jacket, runway jacket. So that there's no, these are little offcuts of design of production. So the limits for us, it's nowhere. The problem of scalability is that we cannot do everything ourselves. There needs to be more people actually doing it, and it afrays me. I totally acknowledge that, but it afrays me what Paul says, that volumes keep keep raising. That means volumes on conventional production keep raising also. And for me, the upcycling, it was always a short to medium term solution because it provides a solution to an existing problem on the industry. What we actually need to tackle is why is there overstock? Why there is overconsumption? You know, and from there, slowly moving the upcycling to possibly mechanical recycling and turning fibers into fibers again. And so for us, to answer your questions, there's no barriers, there's no limits, as long as there's people willing to do it. And just to finish, I mean, we acknowledge we are far from an ideal world. We are far from an ideal solution. It's still a very few companies in the world willing to do. I mean, we have a good representation here today, but in fact, there's not a lot of people actually wanting to work on this. It's hype. It's exciting. It's good for whoever loves a good challenge, but we're still very far from there and from reaching the targets of the SDGs. Very, I would say, but we need to stay positive that that more and more people will come together.
Absolutely.
This sorry to just to finish. This is a great opportunity at the moment for all sides of the industry, of the economy, of society to come together, not only for the coronavirus solutions, but for future solutions. It will put people together thinking on if we are going to create new stuff, let's create it well and think on what can we do after creating the products also.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there we are again at one of the favorite topics anyway, also collaboration and talking more a bit. I have one more thing to say to Janet, but like, please, Morgan, first. Then.
Yeah, sorry. It's just it strikes a chord. Like when we do the Redress Design Award, we'll always take the finalists to factories where most of the time they discover what mass scale manufacturing looks like, because it's not necessarily something you get to see every day. And Daniel, what you just said about collaboration, it's so interesting that that's the moment you realize like designers and manufacturers rarely chat together on what's really possible. There's often someone in the middle, or like a few different people in the middle, and then that connection and that discussion kind of gets lost. And I feel like now is probably the opportunity to kind of put everyone together in the smaller room and getting people, a designer brain is amazing and a manufacturer brain is also amazing, and like you put them together and you probably get different solutions than what we've been doing so far. So yeah, I think collaboration and awareness is definitely something that will hopefully
you might get a super brain out of that, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, just let me get into that. I mean, just one cheeky comment, maybe. I think we need a big room, actually. I mean, for social distancing rules, but also because I think there's more people than you would imagine that would want to participate in such a thing by now. But I mean, Daniel, you're doing that already. I mean, you're inviting designers to your warehouse to have them. You have them kind of in residence. I mean, you have. I'm not sure if it's a program, but you have had like designers in residence looking at your stock and developing, giving time to develop things with you.
Actually, we have a few programs. I would say we work a lot with universities already. We welcome designers to come and take an office in our factory, see how production works, use our fabrics, and develop and understand that you actually don't need new fabrics to develop new collections. That's something you don't need to buy 300 meters of, so 300 meters is roughly the MOQ of fabric that you need to buy in Portugal to make a sales sample t-shirt. Maybe you can use a yellow that is 1 tone below and you will still sell that t-shirt and go on to production after. So to break that, that problem that Morgan was saying, that designers don't know how the industry works. In fact, they don't, and that's why we opened the doors of the warehouse for people to come and see how we do things, even to other factories. Many factories in the past called us crazy, like, why are you doing this? Nowadays they come here, they see how we do, and they participate with us, they share clients with us, and that's something that really makes us happy. On the other hand, we have a sponsorship program with upcoming designers. I can give you the example of Priya Almohadia, which is a London-based designer. We assigned the sponsorship agreement with her, where we offer one of the pieces of the collection in exchange of doing an upcycled collection. So it's you want me to give you something, I'll give you that, but for that you need to do an upcycled collection. And she went on to be one of the winners of the LVMH Designer Award of this year, which with that same jacket that we offered totally 100% upcycled. So yeah, these programs actually work. They are profitable. As Paul was saying, it's all question of its economy, you know, it's the world we live in. We got to prove it's profitable.
That brings me a bit to this point, like, where is the profit at the moment? Because I think probably, Daniel, the designers that you work with and that can actually sell the upcycling, they don't sell a jacket for 50 euros at the moment.
No, I can tell you that this shirt that I'm wearing for Martin Rose, I did not buy it, I produced it.
Wow. How practical.
Yeah, it doesn't go for 50 euros, nor 100, nor 500. It goes up. Maybe because there's a niche. It's I believe, has the biological food was 10 years ago. You wanted to buy organic or bio or eco, whatever country we are in, which is also something very not unpleasant, but how can we still not have one single word for everyone to describe what is organic and bio and so on? Anyway, 10 years ago, it was very expensive. Now it's almost the same price as normal conventional agriculture food. So I believe that's something that we still need to tackle, and that will happen. The price of what is today the sustainable fashion will come down as soon as the big players join the movement. As soon as, and we need the big players to make this happen. It's
but that has always been the role of high fashion, haute couture, high fashion. I mean, they set the trends, they experiment, and they open new markets. I mean, if you get like a high-priced upcycling market, then for sure people will try to do similar things, try to make them a little bit cheaper, and widen the audience. So I think it's really positive signs, even though at the moment, probably I couldn't afford that as shirt. But I'm looking forward that maybe in 5 years' time, the same shirt could already be way cheaper and not worse.
Also, just to complement and to finish that point, industry was always, it's expensive to work and to think, what can we do? It's mainly the time we spend thinking on how we're going to build this Mariah is a jacket. For instance, there's 10,000 little labels, you know, that were going to the garbage and turned into a jacket. Obviously, that takes time. That time is money also. But I'm very proud to say that the product that leaves our factory today, a total upcycled and responsible jacket, is not 10 times more expensive than a normal jacket. It's not. It's actually very, very close at the moment. So I think that change on the price point will happen rather sooner than later.
Yeah.
If I can add to that, I just hope that we don't go fully extreme and that it doesn't have much value again. I'm personally wishing that, you know, the prices kind of stabilize and then we do get, you know, products on the market that actually represent the value. You were saying, you know, it takes time to think through to design something that has value and that you hope it's going to be worn for long. I hope that we get prices that reflect that value, because I think one of the problems that we're facing and why we're all in this panel with Paul receiving tons and tons of product to recycle is that, fashion kind of lost its value as well. I mean, people just throw away. And I think you'd be a really proud owner of that jacket of 10,000 labels, and you keep it for a really long time thinking, oh my God, these 10,000 labels have been put together.
Yeah, I totally.
Yeah.
Well, sorry.
I was just.
As you can see, no, please, then say something.
I was just going to say that the problem of this whole consumption, I don't know if you know, but in the top 8 economies of the world, and this is the United Nations Global Compact data, represent the apparel consumption represents 70% of their GDP. That's apparel consumption. It's a fraying when you think. It's $1.7 trillion yearly in. Yeah.
I think that's a huge budget to trigger some change.
Yeah, right.
I mean, that's way more than the US and Europe is spending, or actually it's around that for now. So we welcome Leila back in the round, and that has a very specific reason. We are slowly getting to an end of our discussion, but we still have some 15 minutes for Q&A. And I also saw, well, we have, I think, the longest comments, questions of the day for this discussion, which I think means people are really appreciating this input and the depth. So Leila, please let us know what is questions out there, and yeah, give them to our lovely panelists.
Yes. So we have 3 questions, and they're quite extensive. So I'm going to start with the first one from Syrian Danis. Hi, everyone, and thank you to all the panelists for the great discussion. Syrian from We Are Basics here. I have a question for Paul. We are a subscription-based circular basic startup and actually have been in contact with ICO. We were also told about the volume problem you raised. We think scale is important for efficiency and sustainability purpose, but also think that smaller brands can collectively achieve volume. Not every brand has the scale of H&M and Zara, for instance. Are you thinking of implementing a collaborative process for the smaller brands interested in recycling? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the question. I mean, that's exactly what keeps us awake at night, because what are we talking about? We're talking about the value of what we collect. And as I mentioned earlier, right now we can only do what we do via scale, but that should not be the case going forward. And we are strongly working on finding solutions, especially for retailers and brands and actors who are not as large as the mentioned companies. And we hope to get back to you as soon as we can with a good solution going forward. But the way it looks like, and that's something maybe worth mentioning, we are getting more and more support also inside of Europe from policymakers, for example. We at the moment we're on our own in a way, and we were able to, with the value of collected goods that we collected, we were able to pay for a collection, to pay for transports, to pay for a manual sorting process in order to really look for the next best use of an individual item. And this value of what we collected, we see them slowly vanishing. And that's the challenge that we're dealing with at the moment. But as we are working on new recycling innovations to come in, as we are working towards having a smarter sorting in order to also meet the newly upcoming demands for secondhand clothing, not abroad, but exactly where we are right now in the middle of Europe, I am totally confident that we can work together coming in the very near future.
I think just a little comment there. I mean, one of the things, obviously, like the elephant in the room everywhere, is also digitalization. In Germany, also there's this buzzword of an industry 4.0. So, I mean, I guess for long term, it was digitalization here and sustainability there. But I feel like slowly, finally, things are finding together. And there is opportunities in there. I mean, 2 things, like very simple. I mean, on the one hand, yeah, obviously it's easier to work with one big brand to organize like a kind of a resale or something. But if you have a smart system that organizes this, maybe even an AI that kind of coordinates the things so that not you personally have to be on the phone for 3 million days to coordinate, maybe that can help. And then on the other hand, I mean, yeah, technology there, like digital sensors and so on. I mean, that is revolutionizing the way how you can sort clothes, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting goosebumps by all the buzzwords you were using.
Sorry, I'm very buzzy.
For hours about it, but just to give you an answer in one small sentence, the advantage that we have right now with working together with bigger groups is that we are utilizing their own reverse logistics, and that's simply the way that we have set up the business. We are totally open when it comes to any logistical solution, but that's the biggest barrier in order to start a collection of discarded clothing, because the highest price and the biggest winners are the logistics company at the moment.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Paul, for this, and Max for answering this question. I think this is going to be a topic that's not going to vanish in the next few months, I guess. So maybe at the next conference we can further discuss this and see how this has developed until then. We have 2 more questions and we have about 8 minutes left. So we have a question from Jane Kim to all panelists. In your honest opinion, do you believe that the SDGs are realistic and actually possible to achieve? If so, what incremental but feasible changes do you think the members of society outside of the fashion and textile industry can make?
I somehow feel, Daniel, that's kind of your question.
Yeah. Yeah. Very briefly, no. Yeah, I mean, they are well thought. The objectives were revised already, and they are more in line. However, they are not sufficient. As I said, we're very far away from achieving those targets. Here, I mean, at Scoop, we tackle climate action. So goal number 13 and goal number 12, responsible production. Obviously, it's directly linked to our activity. And unfortunately, and very sadly, we would need another 50 years to achieve at the current pace, all right? At the current pace, we would need another 50 years to achieve the goals set to 10 years from now. I mean, even in Europe, I mean, the Green Deal sets up a 60% reduction on the CO2 emissions, but we've increased 61% CO2 emissions the last 28 years. So, I mean, in the next ones, if we increase another 50, we're going to be 110%, whilst the current policies that are going to be implemented supposedly in March this year, I believe they're delayed. I hope not for so long, but for the end of 2020. Yeah. Implementation of some measures of the Green Deal. By 2030, they will tackle 60% of a 110% increase. So obviously that's just not enough. To briefly understand your question, to briefly answer your question, and not to say. I mean, I would stay positive. We got to stay positive that technology will come together. Designers, policymakers, Soex, Scoop, Redress, all these players, not only in the fashion industry, all these players, worldwide players that are conscious. This is a time for us all to get together and to find real solutions, and then do a bit what we did here at Scoop, which was to pressure. What we did was to really pressure the big guys and to say, hey, there's a solution here for you. You know, when they come and say, oh, that's too hard, well, I'm willing to do that, you know, if you let me. And that's what really needs to happen.
Yeah. That's great. I was going to comment. I mean, I'm not sure if that question is the right question, because does a goal need to be realistic, and from what perspective? I mean, there's this nice saying that like, I don't even know how to really translate it, but basically like, you know, everybody thought it's impossible until somebody came who didn't know and just did it. And there's nothing set, you know. I mean, none of our knowledge is set. None of our skills are really set. Everything is always in development. I mean, bloody nature has been creating a few very incredible things. So really, what is the limit?
Yeah. I don't know if anyone wants to answer. Yeah, Morgan, go for it.
Yeah, and I was going to say, to add to that, I think it's great that everyone's coming together that's already aware, but I think, I mean, what's going to really change is all these people that haven't woken up completely to what sustainability is and why it's needed. So that might actually make a change if we push all in our own different ways, right? And kind of shake all the trees and make sure that, you know, everyone's on it. People might actually start buying differently and looking at everything, not just fashion, but, you know, just differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul, your answer.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with everybody, everything that has been said. But I think just to on a positive note, for our industry, I think, as I mentioned earlier, we're doing gigantic steps into the right direction. If I just look at the situation today, of course, what makes me sad is that we're dealing with a global issue here. We have too little representatives from other regions. Most of the time, especially in these talks, I'm always missing the production people. I'm also missing the people who are representing maybe this, like the secondhand buying side. And when we're talking about, you know, integration and collaboration, if we want to really fast forward and become faster, I think, yeah, we need to do more of it. I think what's happening is okay and it's all nice. I don't want to be negative, but we can do more. And talking about it is a good beginning.
All right, so let's continue talking about it and actually do something about it. And let's go to the last question. It's from Jay. I feel like a big part of motivating the public and producers to understand their consumption and production should involve a data-backed benchmark of the markets and public's impact. Are there resources / organizations that you're aware of that showcase the current benchmarks in sustainable production / consumption so that we can collectively work towards improvement and feel like our actions are making a difference? Surely the data is spread out, but knowing who is working on this is a helpful starting point for those advocating sustainability.
I mean, if I can take that, and I'm not entirely sure if I'm answering the question, but there are organizations that gather extensive data. So like the first one that I can think of is the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. I mean, they've got tons of different data and statistics, and they publish report all the time. Then there's the Global Fashion Agenda. I guess these are just, if you're not in the industry, maybe you just don't know about. So maybe that's the issue. I feel like my friends are always turning to me, or like, you know, the ones that are not in sustainability, and be like, oh, where do you find that data? And I was like, it's everywhere. So maybe that's the problem. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah.
Do you know any other resources or organizations that
I mean, I think it's about the benchmarking. Yeah, I mean that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I also always wonder. I think it's still needed that we get a more global and more easy to understand sustainability definition, which I would say is part of benchmarking. I mean, the understanding, and then ideally, obviously, science-based. And yeah, I don't know. Obviously, there's SAC with the HIC index, which is trying to do some benchmarking with a lot of data. But yeah, I mean, Paul, I don't know. Are you using some systems? I mean, you must have some data yourself also, for example.
Yeah, I mean, data, especially in our industry where everything is manual when it comes to sorting and something that we're working very intensively on. But I would say, I mean, looking at the sustainability reports, Higg Index, as mentioned, I think, yeah, that's a good starting point. And benchmarking companies with each other, that's very good. And if I look at the dialogues between brands and also competitors, if they consider themselves as such, I think there's lots of very positive dialogue and very positive sharing of yeah, new approaches. So yeah.
So I hope this answered the question for Jay. So okay, we're gonna get to the end of this now. Thank you so much, Paul, Daniel, Morgan, and Max, for this really incredible, very insightful panel discussion. And to all the participants, I hope you can, I hope you received a lot of inspiration and knowledge from this. And next up, and this is actually our last point of the program today at the Neonyt Takeover from the Sustainable Angle, in about 15 minutes on Instagram Live, Max is going to have an interview with EcoAF and talking about their experience with innovation in the textile industry and in design. So thank you very much, and yeah, hope to see you next time again.
Thanks, guys. A pleasure.
Bye-bye.
See you around, hopefully physically at some point soon.
Likewise.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.